Hey, welcome back to the Finale tutorial series. Today I want to show you some of the cool things you can do with the edit function and the angles and times. They're two really powerful features of Finale that, if you haven't played around with them, can probably save you a lot of time and make your scripting a lot cleaner and make your show a lot cleaner. So the general premise of these, or at least what I use them for, is when I want to shoot some comets, mines, something like that, and I want a bunch of them in a row or at a certain angle or something like that. And I'm finding it very tedious to lay them out in the timeline in the way that I would like to see them. So I'm gonna expand my timeline here. I'm going to come up here and pick some sort of single shot effect. Let's see, let's pick say a silver coconut comet. And so maybe I have a bunch of these. Where is it? Here we go. So maybe I have 3 positions and I would like a fan of 5 at each position or something like that. What I can do is use Control T to duplicate the item. 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 effects there. Click and drag to select all of them. Come up here to Edit, Angles, Fan. And it's going to ask me what I want my interval to be, or you can set the total angle that you want to cover. Kind of set which direction you want it to go. If you want any grouping, if you want to sort the angles by any particular, or sort the effects by any particular theme. I think that's for if you have multiple positions. So let's say I want my interval to be 15 degrees, and so my total angle will be 60. I come in here and say fan, and now I've got my 5 effects fanned every 15 degrees. Now maybe I want to, instead of shoot them all 5 at once, I want to stagger them out a bit and make it kind of a sweep. I can select them all again, come up here to edit, times, and there's lots of different options. I think in this case I'm going to say stagger. And maybe I want the whole thing to last, let's say 1.2 seconds. Or sorry, if I want the whole thing, I want to do my duration as 1.2. I want it to be 1.2 seconds, so I'll give me 0.3 seconds in between each one of them. And I can say stagger. You can see in my timeline it arranges them then. And I end up with a nice staggered effect. Now you could have done all of that by manually dragging and dropping them onto your timeline and trying to get the angle where you want it and trying to get the time lined up. But depending upon how specific you're trying to get, it could be a real pain in the butt, and this makes it quite a bit easier. So now I think I'm just going to show you some of and kind of just play around with some of the different options they have. So again, we can come up here, maybe I'll hit Control Z to undo so I can get them back to all being at once. And let's take a look at some of the other time functions. So you can arrange into pairs. Didn't do much. So stretch total duration is oh, I think that one's not working because they're all at the same time. That would evenly spread out your items over a given duration. Let me stagger these a bit first. So now if I have them staggered and I come in here and say stretch total duration, we'll say, what do you want your duration to be? And I could change it from 10 seconds to 1 second, and it throws them all down to that smaller timeline. So if you have some effects that are already staggered, that's a useful function to get them all at a very specific interval. The reverse order, it would just be if you want to sweep the other way. So if I'm sweeping left to right, I could select them all and do edit times reverse order, and that'll spin it back the other way. So that's helpful if you wanted to like mirror these. So if I wanted to come in here and have them at a left and right position, so this left position fans out. Maybe I want to do that exact same thing, so I Control T, duplicate them, drag my duplicated ones over to this other position. But now they're both going the same way. So maybe I want this one over here to be the opposite. So I'd select it all, edit, times, reverse order. And I've just saved myself a ton of time in setting up something like that. There's some other cool things. So if I had, put them out here and get them all in the same position. If I, for example, wanted to sweep across 3 positions, I could select all of these and say edit, angles, fan. And let's say I want my interval to be every 15 degrees again. I can do some cool stuff. It's not quite the right thing because the times are still old, so I want to come in here again and times, stagger. Maybe I want my duration to be every 0.2 seconds. Probably 0.1 seconds. So it creates a fairly neat effect that you could spread across the field that way. Again, quite easily. If you wanted to do that all manually, that would be quite tedious to get all those angles in there and try to get the times lined up just perfect on here. So I find these, when I'm making fronts or runs or things like that, these become my go-tos as far as how I manipulate all of that easily. So another thing I can do with the times and angles options are if I want to create some groups, kind of some logical groups. A lot of the functions have a preserve groups option, and that's just reliant that you already have some semblance of grouping in your effect. So maybe instead of firing all 5 of these all at the same time, I would like to kind of start from the center out and fan each direction at the same time. What I would want to do to kind of enable me to play around with the times and angles is get them into some sort of grouping, not all at the same time on the timeline. So I may select these 2 at 15 degrees and drag them out a little bit down my timeline, select my 2 at 30 degrees, drag them out a bit on my timeline, and now I've gotten them to where the effect is a little bit delayed between each and there's a grouping there. So then if I select them all and come up to my angles and say fan, I can use this preserve groups function and it'll allow me to change some things. So maybe I want a, let's say a much broader fan. Maybe I want a 150 degree fan. It's kind of wild, but that will give me a much broader fan and keep that same grouping that I had. Hit Control Z to undo that, kind of bring me back to my other one. Maybe I like the angles, but I would rather just have them timed differently. So I can say stagger. If I don't preserve groups, it'll stagger each effect individually, but if I say preserve groups, it will keep the groups and factor that into its staggering. So maybe I want them to cover 0.3 seconds. That interval is a little tight. Maybe I want them every 0.1 second. Oops, extra dot in there. Here and say, I didn't preserve my groups. Stinker. Edit times. Stagger. Ooh, that's tight timing. Oops, now there's where you have to be careful. I went in there to change the times, and that preserved groups option did not stay selected. We want the total duration to be 1 second. Ooh, it is being troublesome today. It's because I'm not firing center out. I think what I need to do is check the preserve groups and say fire center out, and then change my total duration, and that will get it. So there we go. Now the cool thing is this will still apply if I want to drag these to some other stations too. So Control T to duplicate, Control T to duplicate. I've got all of these, and I believe if I'm smart, I can still say center to outside, preserve groups, total duration, let's make it 5 seconds. This isn't quite what I was expecting. Wonder why I made these other ones so late. We need to say spread out evenly. Arrange these into groups. So maintain my groups. Total duration of 6 seconds. Interval of 1.2. Apply. Let's see what this looks like. If I wanted that to be a little bit faster, I could come in here, edit times, spread out evenly, make that maybe 3.5 seconds, preserve my groups, apply. And that starts to look pretty nice. Pretty cool way that you can fill up the field, and again, you saved yourself a lot of time over trying to get the times exact on your timeline, get your angles right and everything. Definitely the way to go when working with those types of effects. It applies even more so the more positions you have out here. If you're trying to do 20 position runs and you want them every half second or something, very powerful to work with those functions, and saves you an absolute ton of time. It's also very handy. A lot of songs, when they have hits or beats, if you can figure out the interval in between them, it can make it very easy for you to stack a bunch of effects right on the beat time after time after time. So I think this is where I'm going to cut it today. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't, and we'll see you next time.